Hey, what is going on, everybody? Boilon here, and in today's video, I hope that you're all ready for the upcoming second pass of Red Hulk and the War Scourge. That's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to hopefully get you guys all ready for this. We're going to talk about the characters that you should be using and building if you haven't already. And I guess if this is your second pass, then you probably don't need a lot of the advice that I'm going to be talking about here today. However, for those of you who didn't do so well in the first pass or are just coming up to your first time, then we're going to talk about exactly what you need to consider. So if you're ready to go, let's boil this down. And so I want to start here. Some of you may have already seen this before. This is my Horseman Scourge event guide. This has been updated last month, so it is 6.6 current. Some characters that aren't on this, though, is like the Rebirth characters, with the exception of Captain America, just because of, they're not really all out yet. So this is kind of relevant to now, and this does get updated every patch. And so we're here to talk about War and Red Hulk. However, this infographic is available on my Discord, so do check it out, because, we have all of these Scourge events that are going to be going back and forth, every couple of weeks. So it's a good idea to kind of keep up to date with the characters that are relevant and viable that you should be using, and so it's usually pretty up to date. But for this, whoa, that's really zoomed in. We're going to be here talking about the War Red Hulk event. And particularly, there's one thing that I haven't really updated on this that I really want to do. And so when the next patch comes around, I will make sure to change this. And the reason why we're starting here is because I want to point this out. So here on my nodes 5 and 10, don't do this. Do not build hero ASGARDIANs. I want to make that very clear. This is, for the most part, going to be cut out, and then we're going to be putting in the Wave 1 Avengers. When the first pass came around, I really did not like the usage of the Wave 1 Avengers, because I didn't feel that there was enough there. And in terms of doing higher content, higher difficulties, I didn't feel that it was really good. Now, I had no problems clearing this with the Hero ASGARDIANs up to difficulty, I want to say 8. I'm pretty sure it was difficulty 8 that I ran. But what I didn't like was that the aftermath of it. The investment that I put into the Hero ASGARDIANs as a whole, was quite large. I brought them up to about 800k. Thor is I think Thor is G16. The rest of them are G15 for the most part. Heimdall was 14, I believe. But the overall investment into these characters just didn't feel great after. And the reason for that is because they just are not very good elsewhere in the game. As a war defense team, they just get completely blown out of the water, and I was super disappointed with my investment and where that takes me later on. So they get blown out of the water in war defense by the Eternals mostly, and even in Cosmic Crucible, they're not very good. And so I just didn't get a lot of value out of them after I built them up for this War Red Hulk Scourge. And so I just kind of want to warn you guys that I personally wouldn't do that now. Now, what would I do instead? And that's what we're going to talk about here. You still should probably build Thor, but I'm actually here to pivot. I'm here to pivot to the Wave 1 Avengers. And a lot of that is actually because of the Rebirth this patch. And so now we have 4 out of 5 of the Wave 1 Avengers that have been reworked that are actually very good. Captain America, Hulk, Iron Man, and Thor, the 4 of them together make a really good combo, and especially Captain America's rework was nuts. So he can tank, he can get the charge. Sorry, Thor gets the charges, and then just the same. And that's where the majority, I gotta tell you, 80% of the damage on the War Scourge in these nodes come from Thor's passive. And so the fact that it's still going to be triggering when you're using the Wave 1 Avengers means that that's not a problem, right? And you're going to build a lot of these characters anyways. You have Iron Man for the Bionic Avengers, you have Hulk for Gamma, you have Cap for Rebirth, and so that leaves one extra spot. So what would I do with that? I personally wouldn't really build Hawkeye or Black Widow at this stage, although there is rumors that there's going to be an eventual Hawkeye rework for I don't know. They keep talking about West Coast Avengers and some other stuff. I don't know if that's going to happen. So I don't want to tell you to invest in a 5th character like that now without knowing that in advance. However, there are some other options. You could choose basically your best character, either Mighty Thor or Valkyrie. And I would kind of lean towards Valkyrie for a couple of reasons. Because she's a skill character, means that she's easier to gear. Just flat out. Because Thor is Mystic, Mighty Thor is Mystic, so I would rather you put that gear into Thor for Mystic than both of them, and that makes Valkyrie a little bit easier to build. There's not a lot of high priority skill characters at this stage, so I think that a lot of people kind of tend to have more of that. Also, Valkyrie has her special does a stun, and it does have it was going to buff Thor as well. It's going to give him offense up, so that's going to be really helpful. Mighty Thor is okay with the flipping on her ultimate and stuff like that, the AoE flipping, but they're both kind of really slow. And at the very least, if you run Valkyrie, if she dies, there's a chance that she'll buff Thor as well. So if you need that to happen on, say, node 10 or something like that, then that's an option, I guess, that she could die and then buff Thor, and that can happen. So that's my personal recommendation. Don't do Hero Asgardians as a whole. Do Thor, do Valkyrie, and then use the rest of these guys, because you're going to get much more mileage out of this, and it's just so important that you do this, because these guys are going to be useful everywhere. And so after talking about this, that gives us to the rest of the nodes. There is a bio section, right? And the irony of this is that the best characters are the Gamma team, even though that's the event that you're running. So if you're able to get that 500k on Red Hulk to get him unlocked early, or you know, in this case, second pass, so if you get more shards on him, you do probably want to crutch on that Gamma team if you can. Some updates includes that Abomination is now farmable, so Brawn is the only one of this group that you can't really farm. So, you know, for some people, for newer players, you might not have them. As an alternative, though, of course, there is the Web Warriors, but I do not recommend this. Don't build specifically. They're going to get cut, actually, from the next infographic, so don't build Web Warriors for this. However, Spider-Man 2099 is bio, so if you need to include him as well, if you need to replace someone in the Gamma team for 2099, I'd recommend this. Squirrel Girl is also a bio character, but the reason why I didn't include her in this section is because she's down here in the Avengers section. So make sure you're keeping up with the most relevant characters, and I try to make this infographic relevant to basically the newest ones, because those are the ones that you're going to want to focus on the most. Now, for the Avengers section, you typically have Young Avengers and Bionic Avengers. That's your best bet, because, again, you want to keep more relevant, and the most relevant would be Bionic Avengers. They pretty much wreck it. Only problem is that this is going to be nodes 3 and 4, and so this is slightly before node 5. So if you're using Iron Man and you're using his abilities and they're not full at the end of node 4, then keep that in mind going into node 5, that maybe this might be an issue if his health is low for that reason, and all of that stuff. If that becomes an issue, you can squeeze in some Young Avengers characters, especially Squirrel Girl would be fine here as well. But I would primarily focus on Bionic Avengers. Hulkbuster you can get in the Crucible store. Iron Man, of course. The only one here that is not farmable, once again, is Deathlock. He doesn't have a permanent position. However, and Viv, actually, sorry, my bad. But both of them were available. Both of them were available in the Presence store from the the holiday Presence store. So I did actually pick up some additional shards for them. So hopefully that you guys were able to unlock them if you didn't already have them. But these are a great choice for that. Bionic Avengers really just blow these section away. Their damage is incredibly high. Highly recommended. But if you're also considering for Famine, the Rogue event, then yeah, having Young Avengers built is also fine as well. Now that brings us to nodes 6 and 7, and that's going to be the villains section. And frankly, I've added some new inclusions in here, and if you're a newer player, just completely ignore some of them, including Doom and Dormammu, which you probably won't have. Hopefully you do have, and actually now that I think about it, Evil Strange is sort of farmable. He's in that arena orb, so not really permanently available, but you can still get more shards from him that way. But Morgan Le Fay, hopefully, she's had like 4 or 5 passes now at this point, so hopefully you have that. Agatha, you might have got from the Presence store, or yeah, if you really need to unlock her, hopefully you have her there. So some of the Darkhold is available here, but one character that I really want to point out is Mr. Negative. I did make a video about Mr. Negative. I honestly think he is a very solid pick for any sections of the villain Scourge, because he's a new character. His stats are very high. He is farmable because you're getting 5 shards every day from the web store, and that allows you to get a very high star Mr. Negative without actually putting in a lot of effort. And he has a good kit. So my personal recommendations would include him. Also, Hela and Zombie Iron Man, very great duo. There's a lot of viability for them, both in War and in Alliance War. So I would consider building them. So these three would be, honestly, like my picks. If you and they're new player friendly, because if you're around for the Zombie Iron Man event, then you would have these three as well. Hela's not that difficult to get. So that being said, I would just fill in with some of these other characters where need be. Emma Frost is probably the oldest character on this list, but she still is a pretty good character, and because of her passive and her ability to cleanse, very good skills. Omega Red, not really new player friendly as such, but if you do have them, also you can include them. So anyone on this list would get you through the villains list. It's not exhaustive. There's more characters than this, but these are my personal recommendations for the villain section. And then that brings us to skill. So there's like nothing. You know, it's pretty much your Doom Raid skill section. There's a few other choices, right? There's like Gamora, there's Moondragon, a skill, but realistically, like, this is the primary bunch. So it's kind of your Secret Avengers with Kestrel and Shang-Chi, because he kicks ass. And, you know, it's really unfortunate, I guess, that these are what you need, and there's really... And to be honest, I want to just kind of pull up my skills section here, because it's just... I don't think that there's a lot of solid alternatives, in my opinion, you know, because I was trying to think. Okoye, you don't want to use standalone, right? And Nick Fury, not really good. Killmonger, maybe, but again, you're kind of breaking the team up, and a lot of these things are just not super good, that I would invest in to build. Valkyrie's kind of stuck in that hero, that 5 and 10, so I wouldn't use that. Echo as well, not super great standalone. So really, it just brings you to the top of the list. Taskmaster could be available, that could be an option, because for me, I am using the Underworld team, so I didn't really think about including that at the time, but, you know, it's not ideal, but you could use it if you have Taskmaster built up. Basically, the top of my roster is it for skill. It's your Doom Raid skill with, like, Gamora and Taskmaster. That's essentially it, in my opinion. You could squeeze out Moondragon, but for newer and mid-game players, I don't really recommend building Moondragon if you haven't already, just for the purposes of this. I don't think it's completely necessary, but I just wanted to throw that out there. And, you know, my Secret Avengers aren't even level 90 yet, but that's okay. So that is the Doom Raid, that is the War Scourge section here in a nutshell. It's not the hardest. I honestly love Red Hulk. I really do. But I wouldn't go balls to the wall on too much investment in some of these characters to get him up. Like, because it's the second pass. After the second pass, the Scourges are going to come back around more quickly. They tend to come back, I would say, within 6 to 8 weeks after the second pass. We saw more rapid returns of Pestilence and Famine after the case, and I think that's going to happen again. I think after the War Scourge, we're going to see basically more returns of Pestilence and Famine. So if you don't get super high stars on this time, you know, don't be super concerned, because it's going to come back again, and you don't have to worry about it too hard. I would, though, at the very least, try to get that 500k, you know, try to get as much as you can, but don't overinvest in characters that you're not going to really use long term, because you might not get the return on that. And that's kind of my biggest problem right now with the game and the roster right now, is just don't and why I told you to stay away from Hero ASGARDIANS, and that brought me back to my skill roster, of course. And I am lagging a little bit. There we go. Because the Hero ASGARDIANS just did not give me the longer term investment that I would have liked. When I invest in characters, when I build characters, I'm kind of thinking, what kind of return am I going to get out of these characters in other game modes? That's pretty much what I wanted to say. And for me, I just didn't feel that. As soon as I did Red Hulk in War the first time, I immediately felt like, oh boy, you know, I think I spent too much resources. You know, I spent too much resources on my ASGARDIANS, and it just didn't really feel very good. So I just wanted to warn people here and you know, let people know that's a thing, you know, that's a thing. And for you not to make the same mistake that I did. And just to share with you guys how far I took my ASGARDIANS here. Sif and Heimdall, I think, were my biggest regret. You know, it's not super high, but it's Mystic Gear on Heimdall that I just wish I could get back. And the others, unfortunately, you can't use Hela in the 5 and 10 section, otherwise that would have been great. But even for Mighty Thor and Valkyrie, so Mighty Thor especially, I think I took too far to G15, and I wish I could have taken some of this Mystic Gear back. Thor is the MVP though, so whether you use Hero ASGARDIANS or the Wave 1 Avengers, Thor is going to be your linchpin. So do gear him up, get him up to, pretty much as much as you want or as high as you can. And because his passive is going to chunk the shit out of the waves. He's just going to go off. And especially with Hulk and Cap kind of rotating, if you're rotating tanking jobs, if you're using the Wave 1 Avengers, he's just going to go well off. And what I really like is that this still has all the same stuff here when they attack Wave 1 Avengers. Fill speed bar by 5% and gaining the charges. So great mechanics. And I'm glad that now we can kind of think about using the Wave 1 Avengers for this, because I think that the Hero ASGARDIANS are a dud team, in my opinion. But let me know in the comments down below what you think about that. And for those of you who are watching this and did do it the first pass, let me know what you thought about your investment into the Hero ASGARDIANS, because maybe I'm just the only one who felt that way, but I just feel like I did not get a very good return on this team, and I wouldn't recommend it again. So that's the end of this video. Good luck, everyone. There's going to be probably another video leading up to the War Scourge talking about the Scourges in particular, and my Scourge tier list for that one, for those of you who need help with that. So until next time, stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you all later. Boilon signing out.